Welcome back. In this video, we will take a closer look at gender and family in the workplace. Although many more women are participating in the workforce today, inequality between men and women and gender nonconforming people persists. Labor force participation, which is paid work, is essential for the equality of women since power is very much dependent on control of economic resources. Women must play a role in the economy in order to control or distribute resources. If women do not play a role or their role is compromised, then their power in the economy is diminished and their subordinate place sustained. Currently, women make up 47% of the paid workforce. However, many of those not participating are engaging in homemaking and child rearing, unpaid labor that keeps them out of the economic system. However, one of the most startling changes regarding women in the workforce is what we call the second shift, which we talked about in a previous video and we will be talking about later on in this one. So, women have had a lot of changes in the workforce over time. In 1940, about 20% of women participated in the paid labor force. Currently, 58% of women participate in the paid labor force. Women currently make up 47% of the labor force. Married women with children have had the most dramatic rise in labor force participation. In 1970, 40% of married women with children took part in the paid labor force. In 2012, that number had risen to 70%. So 70% of married women with children are participating in the paid labor force. Employment patterns of women differ from men, more likely to work part-time or only part of the year. Women also work at different types of jobs than men, called occupational segregation. The types of jobs typical for women are generally paid less than men's jobs. The reasons for women's increased labor force participation are due to, in part, changes in the economy. A move from manufacturing to service-oriented economy means more jobs associated with women, since women often work in a service-oriented jobs. Also, the necessity for dual-earner families due to problems in the economy has meant that more married women have gone to work. Lastly, women seek fulfillment outside of the home in greater rates now than they did before. And women also have greater educational opportunities. In this slide, we can see the rise in women's labor force participation. And actually, what you will also see is men's decreasing participation in the labor force. So let's talk about that. So there has actually been a decrease in the number of men in the labor force. In 1960, 83% of men of age to work participated in the paid labor force. In 2012, that number had dropped to 70%. This is due to changes in the economy. First of all, unemployment. A shift from manufacturing to service jobs means that many industrial jobs have shipped overseas. Many more men than women lost their jobs during the Great Recession, and many manufacturing jobs were lost in the US. Due to these same factors, men's earnings have declined as they are forced to enter the more low-paid service sector. This has had a severe effect on men's self-image and self-esteem due to the socially constructed good provider role, which men are judged by. So we have three main areas. If we look at gender inequality in the workplace, we can see three main areas that this occurs in. The first is occupational concentration. So in almost all societies, work is divided along sexual lines. Occupations are often gendered. Men's jobs were socially constructed as being more aggressive, and this was thought to be by nature. So police work seemed to be a natural male occupation. Women have been socially constructed in their roles as more compassionate roles and more nurturing. And so jobs like nursing, social work, teachers, nursery school teachers seem like natural roles for women. Women are believed to be less adept at math and science, so few go into engineering and and the other STEM um, areas. Both sexes face barriers due to this system. More and more cross-gender occupations, but there is a price for that. So generally, when women go into jobs that have been seen as male-oriented occupations, um, there's often barriers to getting ahead into leadership roles. They often face sexism in their jobs. And the same goes for men who enter more female-oriented occupations, or those that were thought of as more female-oriented traditionally. So this leads to a gendered division of labor, and it also leads to a reproduction of gendered stereotypes that are reinforced by this occupational segregation. Another important area of gender inequality in the workplace is the wage gap. No matter how you look at it, men make more than women, even with the same education and occupation. Occupational segregation plays the largest role, however, so women who are stuck in jobs according to sexist stereotypes end up being paid less because those jobs are valued less and are seen as requiring less pay. Also, there's the glass ceiling effect. Progress is blocked, and there is less of an uphill and an upward trajectory for women. Traditional female roles are thought to be worth less pay than traditionally male roles. And so this is one reason for a wage gap. However, even with that said, if women are in the same jobs and have the same education, there is still a wage gap. I want to show you pay discrepancy based on gender. So you can see that here in the green line is where men's earnings are, and then the orange one is women's earnings. So you can see that they are always lower and go upwards around the same rates, but the gap is never closed. In this one, you can see the difference of earnings and employment according to gender and race. So I spoke before about the second shift. So I'm just going to repeat what I said before. So Arlie Hochschild, the sociologist, did a study based on statistics collected by the United States Department of Labor. What she found was that in households with children and two parents working, not only had the women entered the workforce, but the woman in the family was still also performing the unpaid labor at home at greater rates than her male counterpart. Once she got home from work, she was still working essentially, and that's why they call it the second shift. She was doing the labor at home, the cleaning up at home, household labor, and childcare. Fathers are helping more than before, but there is still a very large gap. Currently, men spend about 16 hours per week on chores and work at home, while women spend about 30. So the frequent conflicts that women encounter between family and work roles account for the extent to which they lag behind in higher status and higher paid occupational positions to some degree. Balancing work and family requires constant compromise. So those women who are, taking more time than their male partners at home aren't able to keep up in the workplace because they're doing all of this labor at home. They're also the ones more likely to be going to parent-child conferences at school or to stay home with a sick child. And so they're seen as not really as competitors in the workplace. So I wanted to talk briefly about work-family conflict. So when family life interferes with work responsibilities and when work life interferes with family responsibilities, this is called work-family conflict. Spillover is the transfer of moods, feelings, and behaviors between work and family settings. This common issue has been found to be more negative and more common work to family than family to work. So, in other words, it's more common for you to take the negative parts of work home with you to your family and kind of let it out, let it spill over onto your family than the other way around. It's less likely that you will bring your family problems to work with you and let that affect your job performance. Here's a picture of spillover. Okay, and then lastly today, I wanted to talk about Kathleen Gerson's work, what she calls Plan B. And this is not found in your book, so you probably want to take notes on this part of the lecture. So the sociologist Kathleen Gerson did a recent study on young men's and women's hopes and expectations for their work and family lives. She studied men and women ages 18 to 32. These young people had grown up as gender expectations for work were in the midst of a lot of change. Women were entering the paid workforce in greater numbers, and there were rising expectations at that time. Men would become increasingly involved in family life. Most of the people interviewed, both male and female, expressed their support for an egalitarian or equal view of family, where the responsibilities for breadwinning and for family caretaking would be shared equally. However, they didn't feel all that confident that they would be able to find jobs which would support these ideals. They thought it likely that they would find jobs which would make it hard to share home life in this way. So they all came up with fallback plans. Kathleen Gerson calls this Plan B. What she found was that men and women had very different ideas of what Plan Bs were if their ideal situation didn't work out. The women's Plan B focused on their work at the same time as they are working on gaining greater self-autonomy, financial self-sufficiency. But the men's Plan B was very different. They saw their fallback position as taking the role of the breadwinner with the partner as caregiver at home. And these Plan Bs were incompatible. So, in other words, the men and the women studied all agreed that they wanted to share a work and family life and have everything be equal. But if they couldn't work that out and they couldn't find what they were looking for, the men envisioned a Plan B as one where they would be at work as a breadwinner and their wives would be at home taking care of the family. But the women's Plan B was completely different. It was putting off family life and focusing on their work until they could find the ideal work situation. and gaining greater self-sufficiency in the meantime.